Right now, if it rains for 2 days straight, you complain about it on your phone and wait for it to stop. But imagine the rain not stopping for a week. No roof that actually keeps water out. No dry clothes left. No fire, because every piece of wood for miles is soaked through. This wasn't a rare disaster for early humans. It happened every single year, for tens of thousands of years. And the way they survived it changed almost everything about how humans live today, including something you're using to watch this video right now. Modern life makes weeks of rain almost invisible. You go from a dry house to a covered car, to an indoor office, and the rain becomes background noise. Early humans had no version of that. A week of continuous rain meant a direct physical crisis, and archaeologists have spent decades piecing together exactly what that crisis looked like and how people got through it. The first problem wasn't comfort, it was fire. Fire is not something you simply relight when it goes out. Every method available to early humans, friction sticks, flint sparks, all of them required dry material to catch. In sustained rain, dry material stops existing. Everything outside gets soaked within hours, and it stays soaked for as long as the rain continues. Researchers studying hearths at sites like Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa found something telling. Layers of ash packed unusually thick in specific spots, deep inside the cave, far from the entrance where wind and rain couldn't reach. This wasn't random. It suggests early humans identified the driest, most protected point in their shelter and kept fire alive there specifically, sometimes for extended periods, because losing it meant starting from zero with nothing dry enough to restart it. That single detail, protecting a small flame in the deepest part of a cave, may be one of the earliest examples of humans planning several days ahead instead of reacting to the present moment. Most animal behavior responds to what's happening right now. Keeping a fire alive through a week of rain requires imagining a future where the rain has stopped and you'll need that fire again, and taking action today to protect that future. That's not a small cognitive step. Some researchers argue this kind of forward planning is a genuine marker of advanced cognition, not just an inconvenience being solved. Shelter posed its own version of the same problem. Early human shelters weren't rigid structures. Many were built from branches, hides, and packed earth, materials that work fine against short rain, but begin to fail under sustained days-long soaking. Hide coverings absorb water and become heavier, eventually sagging or tearing under their own weight. Excavations at sites in France and Eastern Europe have found evidence of shelter reinforcement, extra support poles added in patterns that suggest repair rather than original construction, which means people weren't just building shelter once. They were rebuilding it mid-storm, patching failures as they happened, because the alternative was losing the only barrier between themselves and the water. Then there's the question almost nobody thinks to ask. What did they actually eat during a week when hunting and gathering both became far harder? Fresh tracking is nearly impossible in heavy rain, scent trails wash away, footprints fill with water, and most prey animals shelter just as aggressively as humans do, making them harder to find. Foraging for plants becomes its own challenge when everything is muddy, waterlogged, or already rotting. The answer researchers have found points to something surprisingly deliberate: pre-storage. Sites with clear evidence of nut caching, particularly hazelnuts and acorns, dating back tens of thousands of years, show concentrations far higher than would be eaten immediately. These weren't meals, they were reserves, deliberately gathered and stored during good weather specifically for the periods when nothing else would be available. This means early humans weren't simply surviving rain reactively. They were forecasting it, in a rough seasonal sense, and preparing weeks in advance for conditions they knew were coming. Here's a question worth sitting with for a moment. If early humans could plan multiple days ahead, protect fire deliberately, store food in advance, and repair shelter under active stress, at what point does that stop looking like instinct and start looking like something closer to strategy? That's a genuinely open question among researchers, and reasonable people land in different places on it. The psychological side of this is less studied, but just as real. Being confined with the same small group of people, in a cramped, smoke-filled shelter, for days at a time, with nowhere to go and nothing to do but wait, creates its own kind of pressure. Some anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups who still experience extended rain confinement have noted something specific. This is often when storytelling becomes most intense. Trapped, bored, and stuck together, People talk, they recount hunts, describe distant relatives, invent explanations for why the rain won't stop. Some researchers believe these forced, extended periods of close quarters talking may have been one of the environments where early language and storytelling actually developed complexity, not through some sudden invention, but through sheer repetitive necessity, because there was nothing else to do. If that's true, the pressure of surviving days of rain together may have quietly shaped something as fundamental as how humans tell stories to each other, including, in a very roundabout way, videos like this one. By the time the rain finally stopped, the group that walked back out into daylight had usually done more than just wait it out. Fire was still burning because someone kept it alive on purpose. Food still existed because someone stored it weeks earlier. Shelter still stood because someone rebuilt it mid-storm. None of that happens by accident. It happens because at some point, tens of thousands of years ago, humans started treating bad weather not as something to simply endure, but as something to prepare for. The next time it rains for a few days, and you're mildly annoyed you can't go outside, that annoyance is the direct, distant echo of a problem your ancestors had to solve with fire, stored food, and each other, or they didn't make it to the next dry season at all.